Greetings and welcome to episode 9 of Ending the Sexual Dark Age. I'm JV Authoros, and I'll dispense with the normal introduction since this is a quickie bonus episode, or at least it's trying to be. A lot more listeners have been joining the conversation, and that's a really cool thing that I want to encourage. I've gotten several requests for advice and quite a bit of feedback in the last couple of weeks, enough to justify at least a couple more listener mail episodes. So I'm going to do a bit of an experiment and see how you guys like it. I'm going to keep doing regular episodes every couple of weeks, and I'll try to do a listener mail quickie on the off weeks, so I'm releasing something new for you more or less every weekend. The questions you ask me will help steer the upcoming topics as well, and I think it'll be fun for everyone. A couple listeners have asked me to cover some fairly serious topics, and I will get to them soon, but this time I wanted to focus on things that are more on the fun side. First, I want to take a minute to explain how I view the various ways you guys can contact me when it comes to anonymity. I understand the need for it better than most, and I extend whatever degree of anonymity that any given listener might desire. Just to clarify, unless you tell me otherwise, I'll assume that any comment posted on sexualdarkage.com or in public on Facebook or Twitter is totally fair game, and that whatever name you used publicly to post your comments is cool to mention on the show. If you contact me via email or private message on Facebook, I'll always assume you wish to remain anonymous. It's always helpful if you give me a nickname to use so I don't have to resort to numbering people or something. Listener number 8324368 just wouldn't seem too personal. If you leave a voicemail message on the listener line, I assume you don't mind having it played on the show, unless you tell me otherwise in your message, but that's also mentioned in the greeting. Since statistically most people are straight, I'll assume commenters are straight unless they tell me otherwise. If you're bi or gay, my advice on any given topic might be totally different, so it's in your best interest to speak up if you are. If your question is regarding BDSM and you have tendencies towards dominant or submissive, that's also an extremely helpful thing to pass along. Anonymity is a wonderful thing, and you should make the most of yours. The names can always be changed to protect the guilty. To get us started, thanks to Derek, I got to learn a new health benefit of masturbation, and I love learning new things out of the blue. He writes, I can attest to the health factor of masturbation in between actual sexual encounters, of course. I had what was diagnosed as a potentially minor case of prostatitis. If you know anything about the condition, you'll know what I mean and that it is a mystery to the medical profession. There is no cure, so they say. I researched some homeopathic methods to combat this. One thing I read over and over again on forums was to keep the plumbing flushed. A steady regimen of flushing and the natural benefits as well, wink wink, has yielded awesome results. 6 years later and I have no issues whatsoever. After seeing this comment, I took a few minutes to research prostatitis and quickly found out that it's a fucking miserable collection of conditions with a lot of very painful symptoms that all revolve around the cock and balls department. So basically, there's a condition that has the symptoms of a horrible venereal disease which is actually relieved or outright prevented by masturbation. One more demonstration of nature's love for irony, and another great reason to jerk off. Thanks for sharing that, Derek, and to take the thought one step further, there are probably all kinds of guys who will never develop the condition at all, as long as they keep greasing the weasel on a regular basis. Mimi writes, I am a happy single woman. Unfortunately, being single causes me to have long periods of droughts at a time. After listening to your episode on pleasuring thyself, it caused me to become more curious about masturbation. I have tried it in the past, but it never seems to work for me. I've tried a dildo and a vibrator, but didn't particularly like it and wouldn't get or stay wet. I've tried fingering myself, but just don't like the way that it feels in there. I've also tried randomly rubbing on my clit, and that doesn't seem to work either. Is there something wrong with me, and/or is there another avenue that I can try? I really would like some ideas because I've never had an orgasm without a man giving it to me. I just had accounted it to being that I can't seem to turn myself on. Please help. Now, since Mimi emailed me, I was able to write back for a little clarification on a couple of points, and she responded, I've noticed that I can ejaculate a lot during penetration, but sometimes something stronger happens also. I can have an orgasm during penetration also, but is there more than one type of coming for women? I always thought so with me. I separate them by saying that I can nut during sex, but it takes extra work to get me to have an orgasm. I don't know. First off, Mimi, there is nothing at all wrong with you. Women aren't taught to rely on themselves for sexual satisfaction. They're taught that they're supposed to rely on men, and if men aren't giving them what they need, well, then they're shit out of luck. Now that sounds like a bullshit situation, because it is, but that's what we're dealing with here in the Sexual Dark Age. To answer your last question first, there are indeed many different types and intensities in the realm of female orgasms. Shara also happens to be a squirter, so I'll have her talk about that towards the end of the show, but it's not surprising at all that you feel one pleasurable sensation when you're squirting and something more intense when you're having an actual orgasm. The rush of endorphins you feel when you're soaking the sheets is definitely physical pleasure and a strong physical reaction, but most women able to squirt definitely classify that feeling as separate and less intense than the orgasm that's usually right in the neighborhood when it happens. Since you're able to get off on cock and even able to squirt, it seems pretty obvious that your obstacle is mental as opposed to physiological. Your body was not only built for orgasms, but built for powerful, mind-numbing orgasms. That's a big win for you. That's like winning the genetic lottery in one way. You just need to figure out how to drive instead of just riding along when a guy's getting you off. This is also obviously a situation you've been dealing with all your life, so at this point you probably start out a little bit discouraged. Every time you try masturbating, there's a little voice saying, "Yeah, like it's gonna work this time." You need to tell that little voice to shut the fuck up or drown it out with a couple of drinks. There are different angles to approach this from, and hopefully one of the following ideas strikes your fancy. First and foremost, I suggest playing with your pussy way more often. I'm not just talking about trying to get yourself off, I'm just talking about playing with it like a toy. Guys play with our cocks all the time, because they're fun to play with, and just playing with it is definitely something totally separate from jerking off. Your hand, brain, and pussy need to get on the same page and really make friends with each other. If you're casually stroking your pussy while you're watching TV or taking a bath with no expectation or intention beyond just playing with it, you're not putting any pressure on yourself and there's nothing to be discouraged about. Stress and mental pressure keep a lot of women from having orgasms at all during sex. The same type of thing can very easily mess with your head when you're trying to play with yourself. Most women enjoy porn more than they let on, but many do prefer the written word, and you might want to start reading some erotica. If you want to get started, I have an erotica site at twistederotica.com where I've got a few of my own pieces published. Instead of laying down in bed on a whim and deciding to try to get yourself off, don't start playing until you're already turned on. One cornerstone of healthy, successful masturbation, and also sex actually, is the ability to fantasize. Whether you're closing your eyes and using your imagination, looking at porn and using your imagination, or reading some well-crafted smut and using your imagination, you need to figure out how to get yourself to the same mental place you're in when you're getting fucked. This may sound a bit silly, but I'm totally serious. You need to learn how to date yourself. When a guy starts dating a woman, he's beginning with no information other than trying to figure out how to get in her pants and get her off. Among other things, of course, yes, we do give a shit about the entire package and the entire woman. But let's not pretend guys aren't thinking about pussy from the word go. You've probably never approached your own pussy that way, but I suggest that you try it out. Set aside a few evenings, get something smutty to read or watch, and have a couple glasses of wine or whatever it is that you like to drink. Relax. When you start feeling that tense little sensation of your pussy waking up and taking notice, just casually play with it and enjoy the feeling and go on about whatever you're doing. Let your pussy tell you how it likes to be touched and just listen to it. Basically the same thing I tell guys when I say to pay attention to a woman's reactions. If you start feeling the urge to put down the book and pick up the dong, then go with it, by all means. If not, just keep reading. Just keep letting your fingers play around between your legs. Don't stress out about it. The key is to take the pressure off. Maybe you get yourself off the first night you try, maybe the next time, and maybe the time after that, but don't let it worry you. You'll progressively get to know your own pussy better, and you will eventually get there. Still, historically, you've only had orgasms with cock inside you, so you also need to take a look in that direction. When it comes to toys, I highly suggest using lube. In your case, you might want to try some of the warming, tingling lubes to see if they help give you a little extra nudge. And thanks to KY, you can now get those at any respectable drugstore. It's your brain that tells your pussy to get wet, and while you're working on training your brain, the lube can be a big help in the friction department. If you're not getting wet, you're going to be stressed out about not getting wet, and it just turns into this bullshit cycle. So take all of that concern right out of there and get some lube. You should also pay careful attention to the shape of any toy you might decide to pick up. You might have to go through a bunch before you find something that works for you, but you should know that several researchers have concluded scientifically that the cock is in fact the perfect shape to stimulate the inside of the pussy. Since in your case real cocks can get you off, I'm going to strongly suggest you try something about the size of your favorite real-life cock and make it one of the lifelike silicone dildos that feel a lot like real flesh. While I'd suggest most women focus on getting to know their clit a lot better, you should try duplicating the actual sensations that are already getting you off with a man as much as possible while you're alone. You may eventually find the vibrators work for you, but for starters, stick to what's worked in the past. Something that feels like a cock in there instead of some elaborate glass fuck stick or something. Yet another option is to get a guy to help you figure it out. The human brain is very associative, and the more you subconsciously associate masturbation and toys with sex, the more easily they'll get you off. Using toys as part of sex, while you know you're going to be getting some actual cock in the end, will help your brain make the association between toys and sexual pleasure. You know, some things about improving your sexual attitude and improving your sex are basically learning how to trick your own brain into doing things it doesn't already want to do or that it hasn't been trained to do in the past. Another great thing to do with an open-minded guy is to play with your clit during sex, if you're not doing that already, or especially to have him do it for you. You'll probably find that it intensifies the orgasms that you have with the guy, and it will also start teaching your brain to associate a finger playing with your clit with something that gives you an orgasm. So Mimi, I hope some of this helped, and I'd love to hear back from you one way or the other. This isn't something you're likely to change overnight, but the biggest thing is to take the stress off yourself in as many little ways as possible. Just like I tell the guys, you tease an orgasm out of a woman. You don't pull it out of your pocket and give it to her. You need to learn how to do that just like they do. And luckily for you, you can play with your pussy and practice just as much as you want. Next, I got a comment on the My Dick Got Demoted page this week that was a pretty clear cry for help. Robin wrote, "Hello, and thank you for such a refreshing show. I might as well demote my dick. The problem is that the brain says pretty much the same thing. Stay with this girl, she is the hottest girl you might ever score. So I pretty much need to demote myself and let my dick decide for me so I can get it over with. Grabbing some strange ones at the bar or something, I have to have my stories, I need to live my life pretty wild. At the age of 22, I need to try the single life for a while, so I can finally get the motivation to exercise and get slim again. I can't really see any real reason to life itself for the moment, actually, except waiting for your episodes." First and foremost, Robin, I am sorry to say that you sound pretty fucking miserable. If I had to guess, I'd say you've probably been in the same relationship for a long time and that it stopped working right a while ago. 22 is definitely the right age to be wild. You're still young enough to use the youth excuse. And there's nothing wrong with deciding to enjoy your youth to the fullest. I mean, I sure as fuck did. Finding the right long-term playmate is a mixture of luck, skill, and perseverance. Sometimes a person starts out right for you and then you both get older, change, and grow apart. This is especially likely when you're in your late teens and early 20s and your view of the world is changing really quickly. Regardless, staying with someone who makes you miserable just because you think she's hot is a fucking terrible idea. I think you already know that. But maybe hearing it from me will help shake you loose. A hot woman who makes you miserable is just a woman making you miserable. And if you were actually having great sex, you'd probably see plenty of purpose in life, so you're obviously not getting that either. My only suggestion is to do what you obviously already know you need to do and move on. It may hurt like hell for a while and there may be drama, but when the option is feeling like shit all the time or trying something different, the only clear choice is to try something different. Good luck to you, man, and I hope you get it sorted out. Next, we have something a little bit exciting. The first question left on the listener line, which you too can call at 517-376-3116. Ninja apologized for leaving a long message, but I want to encourage anyone who calls in to make their message as long as it needs to be in order to say what you need to say. I'll always edit things down before actually inserting them in the show, so I'll pull out the core of the question for the listeners. In general, the more info you give me, the better I'll be able to answer your questions, so don't be afraid to get a little long-winded with pertinent details and supporting info. To get right to Ninja's question,
I have a question. I find myself leaning toward harder versions of porn now that I'm really looking into it. And BDSM, it's become I really like it, and I don't really know how to initiate it into my sex life. Do you have any tips or suggestions that may help me?
Well, Ninja, it just so happens that I can indeed make some suggestions, and thank you for asking me to talk about one of my favorite topics. I'll tell you up front that BDSM is a complicated world with a lot of options and flavors, in contrast to what we kinksters call vanilla sex. There's a lot of philosophy and background involved to do the topic justice, so I won't try to do that quickly today. Sometime around the beginning of next year, I'll start getting into a lot of detail on BDSM and how to dip your toe into the pool for the first time. But your question gives me the perfect opportunity to get everyone thinking about it a little bit now. BDSM evokes primal, visceral responses in people, but a lot of what the average person is exposed to revolves around the shock value that it's used to get on primetime TV. I've seen very few television shows or mainstream media outlets take a serious look at the lifestyle, so I want to give a quick shout out to the original CSI. The episode chain with Lady Heather took an honest and objective tone towards kink, and the producers will always have my respect for that. Making your playtime more kinky should definitely be done in small metered doses. BDSM is all about pushing forward to explore your sexuality and the limits of your desires and willingness in careful steps, with a focus on never pushing too far too fast. That's one of the key aspects that never seems to get any airtime in most forums. The other is that the submissive is ultimately in control, as the sub always maintains the right to say stop. What you don't see in a lot of the porn available online are the long discussions with an actor prior to shooting anything regarding what she is willing to do and not willing to do. It detracts from the hotness of the scene to bring that on screen for the action, but the key to rewarding kinky play is to push limits without pushing too far. When you see a submissive getting tied up and pulling a train on a bunch of guys, I assure you that was exactly what she signed up for, and she agreed to it beforehand. The term pushing limits is kind of a catchphrase of the lifestyle that I should probably explain. There are a lot of options in kink, from bondage to humiliation to trampling, spanking, fetishes, water sports, and pretty much anything else you can imagine. We'll talk about soft and hard limits a lot. Soft limits are there to be pushed. If you like spankings, but you don't know how much of a spanking you can take, and you want to explore that, that's a soft limit. How much, how hard? If you like bondage, how securely do you like to be restrained? For how long? What do you like to have done to you while you're bound? Certain things in bondage for you, then, in that case, are going to be soft limits. The answers to questions like that tend to change over time for any given person. A hard limit is something that is totally excluded from play. No fucking way, Charlie. For example, if you say to yourself, like most of us do, nobody's ever going to take a piss on me under any circumstances, then water sports is a hard limit for you. No pissing, never. In your case, Ninja, since you're enjoying more extreme BDSM porn, my first suggestion is to watch a whole bunch more of it. Try to pay specific attention to what actions, what kinks, what types of restraint turn you on, and then start making a mental list of things you'd like to do to someone else or have done to you. You don't have to share that list with anyone right away, but the adventure begins in your own head. Once you've watched a healthy variety of different kinks in action, you'll have a really good idea of where you want to start exploring for yourself. What turns you on and what turns you off, and what you don't ever fucking want done to you, ever. In practice, BDSM requires totally open communication between playmates. I'm going to harp on this issue. Good sex in general requires open communication between playmates, but in BDSM it is especially critical. After trying something new, you always discuss the experience afterwards to share reactions, likes, and dislikes. If you want to really explore kink, you need to get used to the idea of totally open discussion between you and anyone that you play dirty with. So my first suggestion is to spend some serious time exploring what interests you, and that can probably keep you busy until I really get into the topic of BDSM in a regular full-length episode. Just in case you're ready now and chomping at the bit, and I think from the tone of your voice that you just might be, there are a lot of little ways for a woman to begin steering sex in the direction of kink without grand gestures or long conversations right at the beginning. As I've said before, guys love adventure and they love feeling like they're forging into new sexual territory like Indiana fucking Jones. I get the sense that your inclinations are submissive, so that means that you get to set the pace with anyone you choose to submit to. Kink requires that you be willing to talk about what you want, and as an extension of that, you need to be able to ask for what you want. I said recently that a naked woman asking for cock can get pretty much anything she wants, and this is no exception. If you want to try a little light spanking, it's as simple as getting your guy hot and bothered and climbing on to ride his cock, then whisper in his ear that you want him to slap your ass. It might seem bold, but you know what? While he's got his dick inside you, you can get away with pretty much anything you want. He might hesitate, he might feign shock, but the fact is, once his cock's in there, he's going to give you anything you ask for, and even if he doesn't admit it, he thinks it's hot. Guys find the actual willingness of a woman to ask for things during sex to be incredibly hot on its own, regardless of what mommy might have told you about being a proper lady. If you ask for a slap to the ass while a guy's buried to the balls inside you, you're gonna get it. If you want it harder, ask for it harder, and you'll get it. You get to set the pace and ask for anything you want. Just try to judge your playmate and not push them too far, too fast. Also, since a lot of kinky play involves toys and gear of one sort or another, playing with technococks during your naked time will start walking things in the direction of comfort with different types of toys in general. A little exploratory slap and tickle is all in good fun, but you'll be able to judge if your playmate is into it or not. Just pay careful attention, like you should always be doing during your naked time. Most importantly, you do need absolutely to talk about it afterwards. This brings you right to the core principles of kinky play. One playmate asking for something, then giving honest feedback once they get it. You can't safely explore BDSM without totally open communication, even if you just blush and shyly tell him how much you liked it. Or just giggle and nod. It's fucking adorable. Most guys like their women to be sexually adventurous, but because of the sexual dark age, most have never learned how to encourage it, so you need to help them along there. The suggestion I just made a second ago was regarding spankings, but I'm sure you're creative enough to adjust it to another interest if you desire. Just start mild and don't push things too far. I can share another excellent trick if you'd like to try getting tied up. Get on your knees and start blowing your guy, preferably while he's standing or leaning up against a wall. Being on your knees in front of him is a naturally submissive act, and even if he doesn't realize it, his subconscious will. After you're both nice and into it, put your hands behind your back, look up at him with a smile and say, "This is what I'd look like sucking your cock with my hands tied behind my back," and then see what happens from there. I suggest maybe having some cuffs or a necktie handy to see if he takes you up on the offer. I bet he does. I bet he does with a big shit-eating grin on his face. One theme that I will repeat ad infinitum is the need for trust and honesty in BDSM play. When someone lets you tie them up, they're allowing themselves to be totally vulnerable. And you cannot, under any circumstances, violate that trust or violate that vulnerability. There's a reason the submissive retains the right to say stop in all civilized play. And while I don't have time to go into all that in detail, I cannot stress the importance enough. So Ninja, I hope I've given you some food for thought. It's okay to be turned down by BDSM. More people are than admit it. It evokes something very primal. But steps forward should be taken with caution and one at a time. You may want to pass the time until I cover the topic in detail by exploring your interest through porn. But if you're absolutely ready to start leading your playtime in that direction, I hope I've been able to give you some helpful guidance. As with anyone who asks for my advice, I invite you to follow up with me regarding anything I left clear or any new questions I've raised in your mind. Remember, there's no rest for the wicked and no kink for the timid. Extreme play requires extreme honesty both with yourself and your playmates, and trust for both physical and emotional safety. We've now got Shara joining us. I'm going to be a little extra nice to her because I did wake her up from a nap to join me here at Mission Control. How you feeling, baby?
I'm feeling refreshed.
Well, we did talk a little bit about some of the different listener questions that I was going to be answering on the episode, so I want to get the female opinion.
Okay.
Now, first and foremost, in your position as an absolute expert on female masturbation, is there anything that you would like to say to Mimi?
Yes, but first of all, I'd like to tell you something that I don't think I was aware of until she sent in her email question. And that was, as a squirter myself, I never actually squirted with a cock inside of me until you.
Oh, really?
Really?
Well, that's nice for me.
It was nice for me, too.
And for the record, any of you ladies that are able to do what we like to call female ejaculation, your man loves it. You might think it's gross or something. Sure, you might have to put down a couple towels before you get fucked to keep the mattress from getting drenched. But there is not quite any feeling in the world like getting your balls showered with girly jizz while you're fucking a woman. Because it's so obvious that she is just so ridiculously turned on. So some women do have self-consciousness issues with squirting.
And I can understand that because when it first happened to me, I was actually kind of shocked. I was actually having kind of phone sex with a guy that I was seeing that was out of state.
Okay.
And so we did a lot of phone conversation. Anyway, he was a master to me at the time. So in the BDSM lifestyle. So he would tell me when I was allowed to play with myself. And a lot of times he would talk dirty to me and sexual, and I was not allowed to touch myself until he said it was okay.
Okay.
And then I wasn't allowed to put my finger or a toy inside of me until he said it was okay, which made me extremely wet, and thus I ended up squirting. And so the first time it happened to me, I had a towel on my bed because, I figured that I was going to be playing around.
Expecting a few drippings regardless.
Exactly. So it was fun, and but it did surprise me the first time that it happened. But then I wanted to do it more because I found it fun, and it was a turn on for myself.
Did you get any on the walls?
Stop. No. I'm not a messy girl.
Don't get any on the walls is one of my favorite phrases. All right, now, and you have explained to me before that the squirting feels kind of like a mini orgasm. I mean, it feels really good, but you don't lose sense of yourself like you do when you're having an actual orgasm.
Exactly, and sometimes, as you know, with you, I've actually passed out sometimes, so we'll get into that probably later.
Oh, we will indeed. We will indeed.
But yes, there's different levels of orgasm, and it's just a different type of orgasm, but still a very good one. And especially when you're by yourself and you're playing with yourself, it's a turn on.
All right, now we've got Ninja's question regarding injecting BDSM into her sex life. Now, obviously, she said she's been watching more extreme porn and she's getting into BDSM more. Now, as someone who also kind of came to BDSM through kinky porn, is there any advice? You should see the look on her face right now. Is there any advice that you would like to give to Ninja?
You like making me turn red on, even though it's on radio.
I get to see it.
Well, a couple things. Number one, getting into BDSM as a female, I think you have to be very careful. Well, as a male or a female, but I think as a submissive more than as a dominant. There's a lot of men out there who claim to be a dominant and they use it abusively. So as a female out there interested in it, I'd be extremely careful. They call them munches that you can get into, and I know we're going to talk about that later. So without getting into it too heavy, just be very careful getting into it. But I did start off by surrounding myself with very good people in the lifestyle that protected me and made sure that I was safe. But I, as a person stepping into it new, if they really like porn, then I, as you know, have a free site that I go to when I want to just get a quickie little look at it, and it's kink.com, www.kink.com.
So just a quickie little look at it, huh?
Okay, there we go again. Make my blush.
Because I think I see marks on his desk where vibrators have actually dug holes into the wood.
That was from the kitties.
Oh, that's the cats. She blames it on the cats. You know what? I think it's pussy number 3 in this house that was responsible for that.
But it's your favorite pussy, though, right?
Oh, it is indeed.
Okay. But anyway, back to kink.com. They have on there, you don't have to pay for it, because I don't believe in paying for porn myself, but I know some people do, but when there's free out there and it gets the job done, then why do it? And it's a safe site. You don't have to worry about viruses and things like that. So kink.com, they can go, and there's at the bottom of it, there is a free trial, and it has all the different parts of the lifestyle in it. So it'll give her a good idea of what turns her on. There's one called the Upper Floor that I particularly like, and there's another one, the Training of O, which is about training submissives. So it's different parts of that. And trying to think, Public Disgrace, I think, is another one of my favorites. So
oh, you enjoy the Public Disgrace, do you?
I happen to like, maybe it's because I'm a voyeur or something. I don't know. But,
Oh, or a voyeur, you say? Not an exhibitionist?
No, not me.
Okay, well, that's definitely a topic for another time. But I've had you at a couple play parties that would beg to differ.
So anyway, I would recommend her going to that site because, there's one on pissing and there's one on called Hogtied. And so they have sampling.
So you're pretty familiar with all the many different sections of kink.com is what you're saying.
I think I would say I'm an expert at it, but, I did that so that I could, know what I'm talking about, of course. But it would give her an idea of if it's something turns her on or not.
And actually, that was something that I did suggest when I was talking about that a little earlier in the show. And actually,
when I was napping?
Yes, while you were napping, okay. Which is why you didn't hear it.
Okay.
Another thing, however, that is probably also important is that a submissive is very much kind of putting themselves out there and making themselves vulnerable. It's a part of the rewarding aspects of the submissive mindset, but it can also be, it can also cause a little bit of hesitation, and it can be worrisome because there are a lot of guys out there pretending to be dominants who are just kind of assholes or like to boss people around, and they don't grasp for the philosophical aspects of the lifestyle. It would kind of be my suggestion in general, unless a woman already knows some people in the lifestyle or some people who can guide her, you might want to start by building your own dominant. If you've got a man already, try and pull him into kink, see what his interest level is, because you're more likely to have a safer experience if you're trying it out new with someone else who's new.
True. The hard part, though, from a woman's point of view, is if they're shy and they're unsure of themselves, they might not feel comfortable going and talking to the man about that. So if that's the case, I recommend you can find munches in your local area, and they can always, call up on the voicemail number, which is
517-376-3116.
So they could always call in, and we could maybe do some research for them if they needed to know that. So that being said, I would love for them to do that because I would rather them be protected. If you start hanging out with somebody and they're dominant and you see that they are drinking a lot of alcohol, bad sign. If they are verbally abusive to you, bad sign. So you have to kind of watch out for some things out there, or if it's a female looking for another female, or a male looking for another male.
Yeah, and we'll need to get into all
Right.
of that in detail in the BDSM episode because, like I kind of said earlier, it's just there's so many aspects of it. We can't possibly do it justice while we're just talking about a listener comment, but we did want to give Ninja a little bit of guidance.
And like I said, if she can go to something like kink.com, it gives you a variety of all different types of things in there, so you could get a feel for what it is that you enjoy.
All right, well, I think we're just about to wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to say to everybody?
I would just like to say that I don't think anyone's called in suggesting that you take me to Dildo World.
Well, I'm going to take you to Dildo World anyway. Okay, so you'd like to lodge an official complaint with the listeners that none of them are trying to drum up more dildos for you. Is that the long and the short of it there?
Well, I wouldn't want to say complain because, I think you have a great
I don't know,
listening audience.
sounds like you're complaining.
No. I'm just saying, call.
Nobody's calling to tell you to get me dildos.
I'm just saying, people call in and tell him to take me dildo shopping so that he'll just say, hey, too many called and so I have to take you. But I wouldn't. You have a great listening crew.
So it seems this quickie bonus episode is a little bit heavy on the bonus and light on the quickie, but I'm okay with that. I want this show to become as much of an advice line type operation as you guys would like it to be. So the frequency and length of listener mail episodes is in some ways up to you. Next week's full show will be about going down, and once I finish prepping that episode, I'll know whether I'm splitting the topic into 2 shows to effectively cover cocksucking and licking pussy. I keep saying these are my favorite subjects. I think every subject is one of my favorite subjects. I think I got to stop saying that. I have a feeling I just might have more to say than I can fit in a single episode. Regardless, I have another round of listener mail lined up for the week after that. As always, I invite you to join the conversation by posting anonymously on sexualdarkage.com, emailing jvaltheros@gmail.com, or calling into the listener line at 517-376-3116. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter through the links on the website. If you're enjoying the show and you have iTunes, I would be most appreciative if you would take the time to give me a good rating or review to help me get out in front of more listeners. If you're willing to take a more active role, I invite you to join my army of personal cheerleaders, Belinda and Aaron, plus Amanda, Matthew, Big Will, and everyone else spreading the word to all their friends. All the episodes are available streaming at sexualdarkage.com for anyone who isn't podcast literate. The more people we have listening, the easier it'll be to beat back the sexual dark age once and for all. Remember to stop by the website to vote on which version of the sex toys pornoglyph gets etched in stone, and until next time, this be me, JV Altheros, reminding you that sex is one of the greatest things in life, and there is always room for better.